And we arrived to Ann Arbor in a little apartment. I was so excited because there was fresh air. I could sleep outside if you wanted me to. It was like, wow. And we walk in and there's new carpet. I never saw a new carpet. I didn't care how small the apartment was. We took our clothes, we made a bed, rolled it, and then in the morning I said to my husband, so are we going to meet the Yidden? He said, yeah, come, I'll take you on campus. I said, the Yidden are there? Yeah, the Yidden are there. And I was very innocent. He set up a little card table with Nechayach music. And he said, you stand here and you ask people, are you Jewish? This was the first time in my life that I ever did something like that.
Welcome to Homesick for Lubavitch, a podcast where we explore Lubavitch identity in the year 2025. My name is Bosi Lgani, and I will be your host. Let's begin.
Okay.
Alrighty, we are here in Ann Arbor, Michigan with Mrs.
Esther Goldstein.
Mrs. Esther Goldstein, shlucha in Ann Arbor with her husband, Rabbi Aharon Goldstein, for 50 years. K'nai and Hara.
That's correct.
And many, many more years in Mirza Hashem.
Amen.
And I've been here the whole day and will be here tomorrow working on a multi-video project for the upcoming Celebration 50 in Mirza Hashem. And it's always beautiful to begin a conversation like this after that kind of introduction and learning about what you've been doing and your family and your children who are here with you. It's very, very beautiful. So before we begin, just for everyone listening, please like and subscribe to the podcast on the platforms that you are listening to. It does help with the podcast. And please also, if you would like to help support the podcast, visit hflpodcast.com/donate. Anyways, Mrs. Goldstein, I know you have insisted the entire day that you have nothing to say, but I did interview you just a few minutes ago for the video that we're making, and it did not seem like you had nothing to say. And your son Chaim, who's a good friend of mine, who's a shliach in Drexel University in Philadelphia, he tells me that he has something to say. So we shall find out.
We'll find out.
We shall find out, but I believe. Right. Yeah. So let us begin at the story that you say is nothing. Let us begin at that story. Growing up where you grew up, you have an unusual background for a shlucha of 50 years.
Well, first of all, it's hashgacha pratis that we're doing this tonight, because tonight is the yahrzeit of my grandparents, who I never met, who unfortunately perished in the Holocaust. And so may it be in their schus that the continuity of Yiddishkeit is because of what they began and the generations before them.
That's beautiful.
So I grew up in Williamsburg, as I like to tell people now, Williamsburg, Virginia, because some people think here that I grew up in Williamsburg, Virginia. I grew up in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, the heart of it all. And my parents came in 1949 after their Holocaust experience. They could have left earlier, but they were waiting for a boat and permission to be able to come. And that took, unfortunately, about 3.5 years. And they lived in Germany at the time.
They were married before the war?
So they got married right after the war. There was quite a story of how the shidduch became. Would you like me to tell that part?
Sure, in short, yeah.
All right, because speaking about Lubavitch, it has a little connection over there already. My mother was from Hungary, and my father was from Yugoslavia, but he went to yeshiva in Hungary. When before the war, their yeshiva boys were kind of farmed out for Shabbos, the families, and turns out that my mother's family had my father for Shabbosim. After the war, there were the people who survived, the older generation, not old, but the older than my father, who was at the time, was about 20, 21. my mother was 20, was going around trying to match up the young people. And somebody said, and I don't know what his name was, but there is this woman, Rivka Gittel, and her maiden name was Klein. And somebody said, and an idea, 1 minute, there is a bacher, and I think my father was at the time in Germany. Somebody said he survived. It would be really amazing if we can bring them together. And then the story we heard was that my grandfather, Hashem, Eliyahu, really liked my father. And I don't know who the person was, but he said it would be a really good idea for my father to somehow I don't know how they got hold of my father. My father was told about the shidduch, but without parents or anyone to help guide him, he didn't know what to do. So he sent a telegram to his brother and his sister who survived. And you have to come and help me. You have to come and help me see if I should do this. And my uncle, who in his later years, he lived in Switzerland.
So a bunch of the family survived the war?
My mother, they each had some siblings, but most of the family did not. My mother and her sisters were in Auschwitz, but it's a long story. But
So you said your mother's parents survived?
No.
They did not survive?
No, they did not survive. Neither did my father's parents survive.
So whose idea was the shidduch? You said your grandparents, no?
No, my grandparents who did not survive there. The reason they observed the yahrzeit tonight, and that's both for my father and my mother, unfortunately the whole town was taken. And, the Yamach Shemais, everybody who was in the town knew that whoever was taken did not survive. And so they observed the yahrzeit tonight. And Shavuos was for my father's family. That's how my parents, observed the yahrzeit, just from the people of the town and everybody so they each had about 2 or 3 siblings of a large family that survived. So my uncle, who was younger than my father, he's quite young during the war, got a telegram from my father to come. And he said it was a long trip, many miles, and you take a train and walk. And when he arrived, my father said, "Take a look at her. What do you think?" And my uncle said, he said, "It's a good shidduch." And that's how the shidduch happened. And my mother's sister, who was living in Hungary, made the wedding in her house. We have a picture of my mother. It's amazing because my aunt described the wedding. She described it as the most beautiful event. And it was very simple, but they were very happy. So my father...
it's very special in general, those stories of people getting married right after such destruction, right? And
right.
So there's something very beautiful about it. It's the ultimate kind of commitment.
It was very special, and we didn't hear. My parents did not speak about their experience during the war. Actually, the word Holocaust I learned in Ann Arbor. I never heard the word Holocaust. They used to refer to it as der Mechama.
Der Mechama.
Yeah, and I never thought it was a Mechama they were in. And I'll soon tell you that there was twice a year that my father, on the night of the Seder, before he began the Seder, he'd take the matzah, put it on the shoulder, and walk around the table. And he would say, "Kinderlach, Mami und ich seien daheim. We're here to celebrate also our Gola." And with that, he began the Seder. So as a kid, and then Tisha B'Av by night, when we sat on the floor, my mother and a cousin would read the Eicha in Yiddish, they would cry bitterly. And as kids, we thought, oh, wow, they're taking it so personally, the Churban. They would say to each other, mehr wissen, was das ist. And okay, they're older than us, so they know more about the Churban Beis HaMikdash. And those were the two times that we heard anything about the Holocaust. My father only told stories of Chazdei Hashem, how he saw the Chesed of Hashem in the midst of evil. Like his famous story was how he experienced starvation quite a bit. And one day an SS guard threw a raw potato at him. And he thanked Eibishter because he made it through the day. And it were very, very few stories. My father, in general, was a very strong emunah. Nothing can shake him.
They came from Chassidish stock.
So
that they ended
my
up in
mother
Williamsburg?
came more of Chassidish. You know, they have Oberländer, and I forgot the terminologies.
Halberstam.
I can't remember, but my father always had a connection to Rebbes.
Oberlander, you mean from a different part of the country?
Yeah,
Not a last name.
So no, not the kind of Chassidishkeit that he had. When he came to America, his Rebbe was a square Rebbe.
Uh-huh.
But my father, being a person who just believed in Rebbes, he would go. I call him an international chassid. He felt that every Rebbe had something to give him. He ended up in the Satmar Rebbe, and the Square Rebbe, Skulena Rebbe. So my father just liked what Rebbes had to give. So we didn't really have an identity like we are. I didn't identify myself as a Square Chassid or Chassidim or Satmar Chassidim.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Beis Yaakov of Williamsburg, which is also a miracle that I ended up there, because I could have lay about 2-3 years into my education. I think Satmar opened, and many of the immigrants in our community sent their children there.
Yes, so I was going to say, in those days, Williamsburg was not as strictly Satmar as it is today.
No.
It was a much more diverse Jewish community.
Yeah, it was diverse, and slowly...
Well, Satmar was much smaller. After the war, Satmar was a tiny group.
Right.
They were mostly in Eretz Yisrael, I think.
Exactly. I remember when they built the Satmar Shul.
Yeah.
And the reason I remember it is because my mother was very happy. And I said, let's go in. She said, I can't. I said, why? She said, I'm not wearing a hat on my sheitel.
Huh.
And that was my first, you can't go in. My mother was a very frum woman, and I couldn't understand, what would happen if you walked in, but I didn't ask her.
Yeah, better not find out.
So my father always, and he would go to Rebbe's Tish, and he would say to us girls, I have shirayim for all of you. I brought home shirayim. Didn't really mean much to me, but, the thoughtfulness of my father that he, thought of us
You
girls.
were only girls in your home?
No, I have 2 brothers, and we are 4 girls, so 6 Kanara. 4 of us married Lubavitchers.
But the girls?
All the girls. And my brothers have their story too. My brothers, one is Vishnitz, and the other one is in Flatbush, and it'd be a long story to tell.
Yeah. Okay, so how does a girl who's going to Beis Yaakov in Williamsburg, which is not Satmar, but it's Williamsburg, and it's probably a mix of Chassidish girls and all kinds of girls, probably mostly children of survivors, I imagine.
And Americans.
And Americans also?
Litvish, very strong. Lakewood was you either married, actually even stronger, was most of my friends married Lakewood boys. It was the epitome that you can get someone from Lakewood who sits and learns.
Lakewood was very small at the time.
It was, but it became very popular. If you can get a Lakewood boy.
And already then they were doing the thing where you support him,
Yes.
Really, it started then already.
Yes, it was a very popular thing.
Wow.
And
what did you think about that?
It never spoke to me. It never, so I have to say another thing about my mother and
Sure.
how the feelings for another Yid we got in our home. Um, in an indirect way. So as the Hungarians came to Williamsburg, if you went to a store and you were a nice, from American person, you would hear Hungarian, made to feel like you're not from. And my mother did not like that. She felt hurt for them. So we had actually a neighbor, Goldstein, American, and my mother made it a point to learn English and to talk to her and compliment them on their Yiddishkeit. So it became like holier than thou, like,
Right.
and then all of a sudden the Americans who, I don't know if you know the Wilhelms, the Tresses, they were very prominent from people. And as it became more, I don't know, Williamsburg kind, like they started moving away to different neighborhoods.
Yeah, look, this isn't a podcast about Satmar. I don't know enough about Satmar, but I do know, and this is not, I don't think this is some kind of controversial statement. Satmar came to America with a very specific agenda to be kanoim about halacha, and there's all kinds of historical explorations of this where American Jews used to have, I don't know, was it peanut oil on Pesach? Do you remember that?
Yeah, yes.
And the Satmars came and they put an end to that within a year, I think. And whoever eats peanut oil is eating chametz, and they won on some levels,
They did. And I wanted to say that many of them became Pashkas was Mr. Pashkas, Lieber was Mr. Lieber.
These were Satmar
They were not necessarily Satmar, but these were contemporaries of my father, because my father also went into the food business, kashrus. And all of these people became very successful very quickly. All the kosher brands, those were people, and my father knew them. So that's kind of a little bit so first of all, I want to thank my mother for teaching us about respecting Yidden that are not maybe like you. My father, as his business developed, and he didn't become like a Mr. Pashkas because his customers were immigrants. Didn't have money to pay. But what happened was he had customers like Label Bistritsky, Minkowitz, and my father was a very friendly man. And when he would go...
What was his name?
My father?
Yeah.
Yo Franzos.
Yo Franzos.
Yes, so and people know the donuts, but that's my cousin. That's not us.
Oh, those donuts in the little boxes.
Yes,
they also had a food business.
So
that's bringing me back to camp canteen. I don't think I've had them since then.
It was before that a whole story.
The 6 little frosty donuts in the
box.
That's
right. That's my cousin. So these people, these Lubavitchers, as my father would visit them, especially Label Bistritsky, they say, Rebbe, come to the back. They would verbring. I remember Minkowitz had a bottle of mashka under his counter, and they all wanted to verbring.
They had stores that
stores my father's supposed to be selling. They ended up verbringing. And then they would tell my father, there's a verbringen, and actually my father met the Frierdiker Rebbe. Because my father was open to Rebbes, he heard about the Frierdiker Rebbe, and he actually met with the Frierdiker Rebbe. So fast forward, my sister, my older sister, married Label Newman, Rabbi Label Newman from Beis Rivka.
That's your older sister?
That's my oldest. She's really responsible, she and her husband, for all of us getting into Lubavitch. She was working in an office, and what's her name? Rivki Baumgarten. I think she lives in England today.
Oh, Rivki Shalik.
But her name is.
She used to be
yeah.
Mungarten. Today
And
she's
her,
from
yes.
Yes, I
Okay.
know. I've interviewed her.
Okay, so really? So
Very,
she
very nice lady.
worked together with my sister in an office, in a very misnagdisha office.
I didn't interview her for this podcast. I interviewed her for a different project. But she's a very nice lady.
Okay.
Just wanted to clarify.
Okay, so she's the one who had this idea that my sister would be great for Lubavitcher. So,
Homesick for Lubavitch is brought to you by Yuvla Media, a boutique video production company servicing the Chabad and Jewish community. Since opening 10 years ago, Yuvla Media has pushed the boundaries of artistic and thoughtful storytelling in the community, with an insistence on there always being a memorable story as well as a beautiful and striking visual image that we believe is second to none. Over the years, we have worked with Chabad organizations around the country, as well as large organizations like Boni Olam, Torah Masora, and Atzalathon, guided by the belief that your story is absolutely worth telling with depth and creativity. If you are looking to tell your story with a video, please reach out to us at hello@yuvlamedia.com. Again, that is hello@yuvlamedia.com. A link can be found in the show notes. And now, back to the podcast.
I have to tell you another thing about my mother, Lashon. She grew up with what she always say, Erliche Yidden. And as she watched the community grow and everybody put on a shteibel and a beketche, she used to tell us that when she was a kid and you saw somebody with a shteibel and a beketche, he's a holy man. And today, you don't have to be holy. You just have to put on the levush. So she was very into that if you're going to wear it, be it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so my brother-in-law, he really exemplified what she enjoyed to see. If you're going to be a Lubavitcher, be a Lubavitcher, And he had a way of explaining things to her that she was able to receive. But each time one of us were ready to get married, I remember when it was my turn, my father, and we spoke to my father in Yiddish and English, but mostly in Yiddish, he said, have a very good bacher for you. Because my father knew I wanted someone who can learn. And that's how they kind of quote
But
unquote.
not too much, not late blood.
So my father said, you have a bacher, and he says he's going to learn every night. And I told my father, you have to tell him he doesn't have to. He says, I don't understand. I said, because I'm not taking him. So if he's going to learn from me, he's not mine. So my father was not too happy. Being survivors, they did not want us to be in education. They wanted us to all marry business people and not have to struggle in life. Right. And they viewed education as, you're not going to get rich,
They were right.
They were. And so
you married a shliach.
So before I married a shliach, my friends were getting married. I was one of the last ones to get married. And they're all marrying Lakewood or Pupa or Satmar. And I'm thinking to myself, I watched my sisters get married, and it was the first time that I saw at their table, the Shabbos table, people who were not from. I never saw something like that.
You're saying when you would go to their homes?
Crown Heights, I said, like, not from people at your Shabbos table. I always had a feeling, where are the rest of the Yidden? Like, can't be the whole world of Shabbos, everybody's. And when it came time for looking for a teaching job, I found out about a school in New Jersey where my sister was teaching. And I told her, look out for me for a job. And my mother was very upset. She said, there's plenty of schools in Williamsburg. You can teach here. I said, no, I want a special kind of school. And I ended up working in a school that I met Rabbi David Rappaport, Lubavitcher, and then one of my husband's best friends who was teaching there, Rabbi Z. Al Hashem from Detroit. I don't know if you remember him. Zach Lukovsky.
Sure. The tall.
Tall, very tall. Yeah, we called him Rabbi Z.
Okay.
And then came the idea of my husband, and came to our house, and with his parents, my parents
That's
together.
how it used to work back then?
Mamish. We were in the living room. They were, and my father, he says, okay, this looks like a good idea. So,
But you got engaged before you met?
No. So this is what happened, which was really amazing. We met third time. My husband's explained to them, we have to all write to the Rebbe. We don't announce anything. And my father wrote to the Rebbe. My brother-in-law wrote. My father-in-law wrote. And the Rebbe wrote. This is the part that I have another story that would turn me on tremendously. The Rebbe wrote that I've
Turned
heard
you on
from...
to Lubavitch.
Yes. I've heard from everyone, but I have not heard from the person you're talking about. And it's before cell phone times. I get an emergency call at school. And my brother-in-law says, you have to go, you have to write a letter. And I knew so little about everything that I wrote a letter, and I'm embarrassed. Maybe don't tell the story, but it's a funny story. I came to 770 because I was told you have to go right away. It took about over an hour to get there. And I walked in, I didn't even know where does one put a zettel. So my brother-in-law said, take it to the office. So I took the elevator. I figured offices are upstairs. And till this day, we don't know who it was. I took the elevator, and the elevator opened, and a man with a white beard went like this.
Downstairs.
Like he didn't talk. I didn't talk. He just pointed downstairs. You don't go on this elevator. So I handed in the letter, and 15 minutes, not even that, we got an answer, Nachan HaShidduch.
Huh. So your family basically your family basically assumed that to the Rebbe, the men write.
Yeah.
The men write, the women don't write.
Well, before that, when I came to Crown Heights, my brother-in-law told me there's I don't know, halacha, or there's something that you're in a city where there's a tzaddik, you have to go see the face of the tzaddik. And he said, I want to ask you one favor. I want you to walk into, the 770. There was a Farbrengen, and just take a look at the Rebbe. Take one look. And I came, and I started to listen. And I hear the Rebbe talking about women. I understood Yiddish, so I couldn't understand what the Rebbe was saying. And I was mesmerized. A Rebbe talking about the role of a Jewish woman. What's going on here? I need to know more about this Rebbe. That was my first time. And from that moment on, I don't think I ever davened more for something. I wanted a Lubavitcher. And I had a friend in Beis Yaakov who married a Lubavitcher. And she had this idea that I didn't tell anybody, except my sisters know that I want to marry Lubavitcher. And she told me, if you're thinking of marrying a Lubavitcher, don't. It's a hard life.
So that's what I wanted to ask you. You said before that your classmates, some were marrying Lakewood, some were marrying Papa, some were marrying Satmar. Why was Lubavitch at that point? We're talking when, in the late 50s?
When I was getting late 60s.
Late 60s.
Yeah.
Why was Lubavitch at that point so different? Like, if your classmates are marrying guys from all the way from Lakewood to Papa and Satmar, why is Lubavitch even further outside of that circle?
Because of what they represented. Everybody was a very insulated group. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, when Lubavitch came to Williamsburg, I didn't know they were Lubavitchers. I remember my friends saying, there's this group of people that are coming. And I said, I don't want to go because people in Williamsburg attacked them. Mm-hmm. And I was just afraid. I didn't even know they were Lubavitchers. Later I found out.
Right,
so because they didn't believe in the philosophy of reaching out to non-from people.
Right, so the late 60s was already post the Mitzrayim, which were
Yes,
tefillin controversial.
Tefillin was very controversial. My father was like this shliach in Williamsburg. Mefrek mir, hayatochen.
So when your older sister got married to Rabbi Newman, it was not, at that point, it was already controversial? It was already controversial.
When I told my teachers, very innocently, my sister's engaged, and I said, a Lubavitcher, they looked down like something horrible happened.
Really? So this is already, your sister got engaged in the
earlier.
Early 60s, mid 60s?
Mid 60s.
Wow. So in the mid-chafs already, Lubavitch was already seen as...
They're different.
No, but like beyond the pale is what you're saying.
Yes. It was, and my cousins in Williamsburg kept always saying, but you're not going to do the same thing.
But what was the time? The time was that they weren't from, they didn't have your shemayim.
They were doing. How can you put on tefillin on someone who's not Shomer Shabbos?
Basically, something's wrong with them.
You don't do that to a person. Accepting a yid who's not like you was unacceptable.
And your parents, it didn't bother your parents?
Well, I'm not going to say didn't bother them. My father had a lot of questions, but he had questions that he was willing to hear the answers. Mm-hmm. And I think, thanks to my brother-in-law, who would answer a lot of questions. I remember as a kid, Rabbi Weinberg of Hashem had a Tanya share on the radio before I even knew about Lubavitch. And at Matzah Shabbos, he had a Tanya, and he would quickly sit with the radio and listen to the Tanya share.
Father.
My father. So my father was, on the other hand, when my sister was about to get engaged to my brother-in-law, he went to the Satmar Rebbe and asked, what should I do? The Satmar Rebbe asked him, I don't know, is he your Shemayim? He asked him a few questions. My father said, Mizaktas, yeah. So the Satmar Rebbe says, then go ahead with it. So it wasn't, as a matter of fact, okay, so we get an answer for that. So first of all, that Farbrengen really, it was something very unusual for me to hear.
What exactly was bothering you beforehand? You felt that the communities you were in was what? Was downplaying women? You felt like you didn't fit in? Why didn't you? Why couldn't you buy into the whole philosophy that your biggest thing in life is to marry a Ben Torah and support him? Why didn't that speak to you?
It didn't speak to me because it didn't have meaning to me. It didn't have. I don't know. I think David was very kind to me that I did not appreciate it, and
because it basically meant that you were just like supporting someone else.
No, I felt that kind of not the support didn't bother me. It was the philosophy to be so insulated, and I was really concerned about. You see, we had to sing in school that if any of the girls, and the same thing happened in yeshivas, if they didn't conform to all the rules, they labeled them as the bums, and I don't know what happened to those people.
This is already in the late 50s.
I was in school not so early. I'm not that old, but in the 60s.
You got married in the 70s.
That's correct.
Okay, so I'm confusing
73,
the decades.
yes.
I'm confusing the decades. So in the late 60s, so we're talking within 20 years of the war, there's already this sense of girls and boys who are not up to snuff. Knock them out. Yes. And there were kids that were disappearing out of the system.
They were. And I have a brother who did, but he came back thanks to my brother-in-law. Yes.
So your brother wasn't up to snuff in the yeshiva, and they basically told him you're out.
Exactly.
Really?
And
I was sure that happened later.
No, it was, and that, I think it was more that I really.
But what does insulated have to do with women with Rebbe talking to women? Why
Because
is that?
I grew up that nothing of a Rebbe has to do with a woman. It's just not.
But I understand, but how does that speak to your question of being insulated or your problem of being insulated?
Because maybe if they weren't so insulated and we found out the role of women and we know the role of men, and then maybe that was not even, it wasn't even a question. It was, yeah.
So like insulated, but also like protected. It seems like you keep the women in the home. You don't tell them what's going on in the world, and their job is to whatever to make the house.
Right, and
that didn't appeal to you.
No, not at all, not at all. As a matter of fact, yeah, my father had a business, and we all helped him. We worked there, but I hated business. I had no interest in it. And, my parents would say that the person you marry will have money, he'll take care of you. And it just didn't, I was looking for more substance. And I just didn't find it. When I would go to both of my sister's homes, I just felt like this is really so unusual. I had a lot of friends also from Bobov, because Crown Heights had a lot of Bobovers.
Right.
And I always tell people, don't think everyone walking down Eastern Parkway knows about Lubavitchers. I was sitting in front of 770 as a young girl with my friends. I had no idea that inside that building was the Rebbe.
Right. Yes, that's a common Lubavitch misconception about history.
I think today it's different. I mean, we're much more, and so I had many times throughout my years when the Rebbe was with us physically, how personally I'll tell you. So first of all was when we got engaged, and then before we came out on Shlichus. Oh, first of all, when we wrote to the Rebbe about the Shlichus. So my husband was offered either to come to Ann Arbor to be a shlich on campus, or to live in West Bloomfield, which is more of a pulpit rabbi. So he wrote to the Rebbe asking the Rebbe to help him make a decision. And we were baffled with the Rebbe's answer. The Rebbe answered, "Do as your wife tells you to do." And when I heard that answer, I was like, what does the Rebbe think I know? If anything, my husband knows more than I. So I sat down with my husband and I said, wait 1 minute, what do you know about Ann Arbor? And I said, what do you know about West Bloomfield? And he said, West Bloomfield is a pulpit, they're looking for a pulpit rabbi. Ann Arbor is a college town. And at the time, while we were living in Crown Heights, we would ask Rabbi Costell to send college students to our home. And I saw my husband really enjoyed learning about what they do, and he related to them really well. He was teaching at Hadar Torah. So I said to my husband, I don't think you'll make a good pulpit rabbi, but I think you would be a great college rabbi. We wrote a second time, but my husband forgot to write that we discussed it. So the Rebbe answered, Pella sheshel pam kvar nisi. And the third time we wrote, my husband wrote, we discussed it, and we both agree that Ann Arbor would be a good place. And after the third time, the Rebbe answered with a bracha. So that to me was, I think I appreciated even more in the later years, that the way the Rebbe, and it's not that he elevated women, he used the strength of women. And I had another incident that really touched me to the core, was before we left, we had a very special Yechidus with the Rebbe. My husband...
This was your first Yechidus?
No, because we went in once before.
For
Maybe
the
it was a
chasana?
chasana. Was it my husband's birthday? I don't remember, but we went in once before, but definitely for the chasana, because we all went in for the chasana.
Who's with you all? Your family
My
also?
parents and my husband's parents.
And that was the first time your parents went? No, your parents must have gone with your sisters.
Yes, they went, my sisters, and I'll soon tell you something about that. But my husband, I don't know if he told you or if you know, he was one of the Bachurim who would be there when Rabbi Aharon Goldstein would chazer the Fabrengens, and he wrote every chazara as Rabbi Aharon would give over the chazara. He wrote it, then Sunday mornings he would spend hours typing it up, and then he decided before we left he's going to bind them all in huge, really huge Sfarim. And there was about, 10 volumes of these that he printed, bound, and he took it in on the Yechidus. Well, we weren't going to take it in, and he asked, I think it was, Rabbi Groner, should we bring it in? Should we leave it out? He told my husband, maybe a Glei Chazach, you should bring it in. And when my husband came in with them, the Rebbe showed him where he should put it, and he said, Zicha vetes kommen sunutz, and it has. As a result of that, a lot of things were printed. But as we're standing there, and my husband puts down the sichas, the Rebbe points to me to come closer. And I'll tell you, the 3 steps I took, I felt like I had walked a mile. And the Rebbe opened up his drawer from his office, and that year they launched the Mifsa Neshek. The Rebbe took out 5, and I have one here to show you what it looked like. A matchbook with a mother and daughter, like a white, I think Rabbi Reuben in Albany printed them. The Rebbe gave me 5, and he gave me 5 single dollars, and then another one for me. And he said, the first 5 women you find in Ann Arbor who are not yet committed to Neshek, give it to them, and you decide whether it should be in my name or in your name. Abida Inyan Zal Zechuftan. Well, the wisdom of the Rebbe, because I still did not realize what Shlichus was about.
As we approach the 2-year mark of this podcast, Homesick for Lubavitch has become a household name in the Lubavitch community, with thousands of views each week on YouTube alone, as well as thousands more on the various podcast platforms. We have a devoted audience that listens regularly to the conversations and shares their thoughts with their families and communities. If you would like to sponsor an episode or advertise on one of our episodes, please reach out to Bensi at yuvlamedia.com. That's Bensi at Yuvla Media, YUVLA media.com. I felt like we jumped that over. You're talking about possibly dating a Lubavitcher, and then you're going on Shlichus. Like, there's a bit of a jump there.
I did miss a very big point, and this is like one of the miracles. My husband, if you know him, would never, first of all, I laugh with him. I said, what's a nice Lubavitcher doing in Williamsburg? And we always joke about that. Like, I can't. But he said that when we were going out, he asked me about Shlichus. And I told him, if you asked me, and I said yes, the Malach answered you, because I did not know what Shlichus meant. I had no idea, because he said he wouldn't marry someone who wouldn't go on Shlichus. So maybe so that's a funny thing.
Or you liked him so much that you told him whatever he wanted to hear.
Well, I didn't. I like it. Will you go? I heard the word go, and I think I'll go anywhere. Where do you want to go? I'm not.
Right.
So that was a really funny thing.
Your older sisters who married Lubavitchers, one of them lived in Crown Heights. The other one also lived in Crown Heights?
They both lived in Crown Heights. One moved to Atlanta, and then as their kids got older, they wrote to the Rebbe. The Rebbe told Atlanta. But then they moved to Montreal. Then I have another sister that lives in Crown Heights. So I have 2 sisters now in Crown Heights and one in Montreal.
So the sister who moved to Atlanta, she had gotten married before you?
Yes,
So
two
so you had a
sisters.
sibling who had gone on shlichus.
Yes, and
So you knew what
but it
shlichus was.
I don't know why it was. Maybe because of the job that the shlichus was, my brother-in-law was a chazan. I didn't hear
What was
any
his name? I
opposite.
heard the story.
Shtiefel.
Somebody told me this.
So
Oh yeah. His son told me the story.
yeah. So but I can tell you that. So when we heard about this, and my mother was very upset, very upset. I
Wait, so 1 second. So,
okay.
so you get married.
And then the
and
first
you
summer
like
we
that
go to
little.
South America for shlichus for 6 weeks. That
So
was, remember I told you about?
yes,
Okay.
you went to
And
You went to Caracas for 6
right,
weeks.
and then my mother begged me not to come home and say that we're moving there.
But you already knew before you went to Caracas that you were going to go on shlichus somewhere.
No, I had no idea.
You were married for a bunch of months, and
I can't explain it to you. I didn't. Whatever would come, we didn't. You know, it's interesting because today when people get married, they're much more advanced in their thinking. I didn't think of how we're going to pay our bills. I had no idea. I don't know. We just did it. Like, you know, as I told you, I don't even know how we got a car. It just was.
so you're married to Lubavitcher. He, in his mind, he's obviously going on shlichus,
Yes.
but you don't know what shlichus is.
Right, and then he teaches me.
Sounds like
Sounds a good idea. No, but the nice thing is, my husband is a very patient teacher,
So you go to South America and
he told me that, and we in between South America, we were going to different camps. We were asked to come.
What did you think when you went to South America? Like,
I think that's a great. I think it's a great idea to go visit a community that needs our help. You know, but as the months progressed, I got to learn more. But I didn't know what shlichus was, even though I knew the word already.
I see.
I had no idea. I mean, coming here, as I told you about the first Jew, I had no idea. You have to find Yidden. Let's.
So for the people listening, I think you described it to me earlier. I think it'd be very interesting to describe your arrival in Ann Arbor. But we're jumping around a little bit. So you went to Caracas, and your mother says what?
Please don't move there. And I told my mother, we're only going for 6 weeks. We're not moving there. But they did offer us a job. And I remember saying, I promised my mother that we wouldn't move there.
So your husband wanted to move there?
No, my husband, I think had he really wanted, I probably would have agreed. But he says he didn't finish Kollel, so he wasn't ready. He wanted to finish, and
so your mother already sees a little bit the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
And then you end up in Ann Arbor, like you mentioned earlier, that there was a choice between Ann Arbor and West Bloomfield. You described earlier your landing in the airport in Detroit. Can you first describe the leaving the airport in New York? Did your parents come to see you off?
Yes.
Did his parents come to see him off? What was the difference between the two camps?
Marrying Goldstein means everything is with technology, which means that everything got recorded. And my father...
you have a video of it?
We have a lot of things of it. We even have the Malava Malka that we had because we left on Sunday. And my parents and my in-laws came all the way to the plane. You know, those years you can go.
Sure.
And my mother cried like she would never see me again. And
his family was too busy videoing
no,
it?
they were there, but my in-laws, they're Lubavitchers. They knew what it meant.
Right.
As a matter of fact, my mother-in-law, I can talk to her more about it than to my mother. To talk to my mother about it was a very sensitive subject, and like I was very careful not to hurt her with it. Like it was, yeah.
So your mother was crying about it because she's worried she's never going to see you again.
Because she's a survivor.
Right,
She
sure,
wants her.
sure.
She lived in a community where
Sure.
all the survivors, their children, their grandchildren. She was one of, I don't know how many, who did not have any child living in Williamsburg. And they're all asking, where are your children? And it sounds like we all left our parents.
And she's also not a Lubavitcher.
And she's not a Lubavitcher, so she doesn't.
So did she ask you not to go?
I don't know if she asked me, but she definitely conveyed the message very clearly.
And your father?
My father was more like, are you going to be able to do all the mitzvahs there? Or, he was more concerned about going to a place of ruchnias. Even when he would come here, he would go. They couldn't understand it, how people would, the students would come in, the middle of a table, they just sit down, they take something to eat, they leave. It's not a Shabbos tish, it was. I liked having my parents from Sunday to Friday, but when it came, Yantiv was not a time for them.
How did you feel making your mother so upset?
I don't think I felt. I didn't. I couldn't understand what was. I didn't look at it. I just felt that. I'm sure she cried when I got married. So she's crying now when I'm leaving again. I didn't look at it like I'm hurting her. I looked at it as...
part of life.
And I didn't actually think about her past. It took me many years to reflect. That's another story, that I never thought of myself as a child of survivors. Until I came to Ann Arbor and somebody found out about my past, and they asked me to join a group of second generation. That's when I found out it's not called the war, it's called the Holocaust.
Yeah, but it's a unique story. I mean, really, this is a story that took place in Lubavitch itself. There were many Lubavitchers who went directly to the Rebbe and said, please don't send our kids away. But I think that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is that very often children decide to stake their own path, and parents are not they're not pleased with it. They're worried for their kids. They feel like their kids are going to end up in a bad place. And just because your parents are worried about it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it necessarily. Right?
Yeah, I think they were just worried. They wanted the best for us.
Right.
So, when you're in your 20s, you're not thinking that my mother was worried about me.
Right.
And she, yeah.
It was a crazy idea. Right, to go at that time, to go to Ann Arbor. I mean, Michigan may as well have been Caracas when it was Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Where my mother always said to her friends that her children live in Detroit. She didn't want to say that, because they'll ask her all the questions, is there a shul, is there a minyan, is there this, is there that? She avoided all those questions, because she didn't know how to answer them.
Did she ever come around?
So she came. As I told you, when she came...
Did she come around to the idea?
Oh, to the idea? Yeah, she did. She, she came around, and we were able to talk about it more. I try not to share with her any challenges, or I always made it seem like everything was perfect and really great. I would take her, she liked nature, so I would take her to places that were really beautiful. So kind of show her she doesn't have to worry. We're okay.
But did she come around to understanding why you did it? Like,
I don't know if she came around to understand, but she came around to accept that this was a kind of life that you have to understand. The community like my cousins who are Satmar, in the earlier years, they couldn't believe. Well, even my Beis Yaakov friends, when I told them I'm moving to a place called Ann Arbor, and what? So my friends predicted one of two things is going to happen to you in 10 years. Either you're not going to be from anymore, or you're going to have to live on a farm. Your husband's going to have to be a sheikhet. He's the only way that you're going to be able to keep kosher. He's going to have to milk the cows, which he ended up doing, not because of that, but because in our early years, he would take the kids and to the farm. But people just couldn't see a from person. You're going to live there? Mamish Meshuggah, and I about 10 years ago, I met a friend of mine, and actually they all kind of took a step back from me. They thought I really went off the deep end. And about 10 or 15 years ago, I bumped into a woman in Muncie, and we recognized each other. And she said to me, "Where did you go? You went to like a hick place?" And I reassured her that I'm from, my children are from. "Really?" I said, "Yeah, really." I told her my name, and I said, so it was something that the Rebbe did that nobody did. Nobody, none of the Rebbes.
No, it's a great story for that reason, because a lot of times people talk about, the Rebbe being different, or the Rebbe being talking about things. Yes, today everyone talks about it, but back then he was literally the only person. And your story is a reflection of that, because you were one of the people, I don't know how many there were, maybe there were some others, but there weren't too many, who is going on Shlichus, but surrounded by everyone else. And the response is not just lukewarm, okay, whatever. It's like aghast, like, what's wrong with you?
Right.
So that does indicate, I don't know if you need proof, but it does reflect, and it shows a little bit of, it gives a little bit of context to this idea that, back in those days, Shlichus and reaching out to other Yidden was completely off the table.
It was completely off. Now, all these people, well, we set a great example, who look at the Misnagdim with their kiruv.
Right.
My cousins, those who thought I was crazy, and they do a lot of traveling to Europe, the first thing they do is look for a Chabad House.
Right.
And I have some cousins that I call, and they're always, they say, did you hear Esther? Esther makes her own, she only has schmaltz on Pesach. Can you believe it? She does that? And I tell them why. I said, I challenge them. I said, I think I remember you used to do that. She says, yeah, but we can't. It's but we have a very good Hersher oil. I said, but you used to do that. I challenge them. You're the one that went down in your standards. So they laugh. I said, and then they question me. So you have kosher milk? They go through all the products.
All right.
I said, if I'm doing schmaltz, you can believe me that I do the other things.
That's very interesting.
Yes.
So you were describing to me earlier your landing in Detroit. It was interesting how you described it. So take us there. You land in Detroit, and what happens?
And it's late, and I think that's also what worried my mother. I didn't have a plan for her. I couldn't tell her we're arriving. Somebody's picking us up. There's a community, like.
A bunch of happy-go-lucky hillbillies, basically.
She thought I was irresponsible.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, it does, right? We land in Detroit, and it's my husband says, "Do you want to go to Ann Arbor, or do you want to go to this place called Oak Park? There's a Lubavitch community." I said, "1 minute, where are we living?" He said, we're living in Ann Arbor. I said, why would we go to Lubavitch community? That would, so again, he goes, I don't know where he found the car, but he did. He had made arrangements when he came here once before. And it was his first time driving. My husband drove with a car that had no alignment. If my mother knew these stories, she never did. We never told her the story. And we arrived here in Arbor in a little apartment. I was so excited because it was fresh air. I could sleep outside if you wanted me to. It was like, wow. And we walk in and there's new carpet. I never saw a new carpet. I didn't care how small the apartment was. We took our clothes, we made a bed, rolled it, and then came the fun part because now we have to get to work. So in the morning I said to my husband, so are we going to meet the Yidden? He said, yeah, come, I'll take you on campus. I said, the Yidden are there? Yeah, the Yidden are there. And I was very innocent. He set up a little card table with Nechayach music. And he said, you stand here and you ask people, are you Jewish? This was the first time in my life that I ever did something like that.
If you're looking for an event that is memorable, meaningful, and affordable, let me recommend This World is a Garden, a film and live concert production created by us here at Yuvla Media, inspired by Bosi Lgani, the first mimer, the Rebbe said. If you're a regular here at HFL, you know that Bosi Lgani is something that we think about and talk about a lot. And in this production, we use the power of cinematic filmmaking and a live concert by a string quartet to bring the beauty of Bosi Lgani to your community and your audience in a way that they've never seen, heard, or experienced it before. The production has already been hosted by Chabad houses around the country and has drawn wonderful reviews. Our package comes with everything that you need to put in the production: the film's original arrangements for string quartet, publicity materials, everything besides the string quartet, which you recommend that you hire locally to save on travel costs. To find out more about this production, please visit thisworldisagarden.com. Again, thisworldisagarden.com. And now, back to the show.
And I said, and that's how they come? And he said, yeah, that's how they'll come. Well, I stood there for a long time. And I was, at that time, I was expecting our first. And I thought, okay, Eibishter, Rebbe, I need 1 hour for 1 Yid to appear if we're supposed to be here. And all of a sudden, a Yid comes running towards me, and I said, are you Jewish? And he looked at me, are you Chabad? I said, yeah, how do you know? He said, I've been waiting for you. I was so thrilled. You could have tell me I won the lottery. I found a Yid. Well, I knew if I found a Mickey, there's a Minnie somewhere. And this person was with us for about 48 years of our 50 years. And I closed up my little table, took my cassette recorder, and went to Chabad House. Very excited to tell my husband that I found one Yid. And he was very proud of me that I found one Yid. So, yeah.
Were you wondering, like, what am I even doing here?
I think when I was on campus, I was like thinking, like, really, is this what my husband thinks we're going to do? Like, every day we're going to come out here and we're going to find Yidden? I'm like, where are they?
But do you at some point be, oh my goodness, I should have double checked what this is?
No, I just thought it was like, I didn't have any doubts that we should be here. But I think if I didn't meet that Yid, it would have been, I think my husband would have come back on campus with me and made sure we found the Yid. And he was also excited to meet Yidden because one day he was driving and he saw Magen David on a car. And he followed it until it stopped at a hardware store. And it turned out it was a Hillel rabbi. So that's how they met. He followed it with the car, and he... finding another Yid was very special.
So what was, you're talking about the innocence that you had going on shluchas, but the truth is at that time there were very few campus shluchim. There were very few out there.
Right.
You were one of the first batch. So what was the plan? Like what was the path? Did you have any idea
Well,
what
first
what
of
it
all,
was going to look like?
I remember we had a fax machine, and I got super excited when my husband brought home a fax. I couldn't believe it. There was no connection to the outer world, other than, yeah, I remember at that time long distance calls were very expensive, and I felt like I needed to talk to someone. So I would call my sisters, and my husband said, it's like, whoa, you're really talking for long, because the phone bills were like, they tell you you're on the phone for an hour or whatever. And I said, that's the only people I can talk to. It took a long time for me to get involved in the community. I had some wonderful stories of meeting students and, very beautiful interactions with them. But students come and go. So it wasn't like I can create a friendship with very few people.
Is there ever a point where you're like, what is the plan? What's it going to look like in 10 years?
I don't know. I just know that in the beginning, the difficult thing was I grew up that you know someone forever, and I get to know people, and the next thing I know they're moving. It's a very transient community.
Right.
And then one day somebody asked me, "How long are you staying?" I came home. I asked my husband, "How long are we staying?" He said, "Very simple." I said, "Really? Like, how long?" He said, "When we get our job done, we're out of here." So I understood that until we meet every year, that it's, I think that the vision.
That there was never a time where you're like, okay, this is crazy.
Not that, it was never a time that I would think that I would do anything else. But there were times that I thought, how are we going to do it? How is this going to happen? I remember once asking, I actually once sat down with my husband and I said, how are we raising these children in this environment? So he told me something very wise, and he said, in this house, you and I are the king and queen. Inside our house, we can't blame it on anyone. We set the tone, we set the rules, we set the atmosphere, and that is the same if we lived in Crown Heights, Williamsburg, Borough Park, wherever. So we happen to be in a place called Ann Arbor, so that's not going to change. And that was really important to me. And I remember once speaking to my father-in-law. I had a very wonderful relationship with my father-in-law. I actually learned Hasidus with him. It's a whole other story. And I asked him, because he was an educator, and I said, so, how's it going to work? He said, your children, you're not carrying the responsibility yourself. The Rebbe is sharing this with you. And he said in a very reassuring voice, and I think that's the part that, not that concerned me, that I paid attention to. And my kids they were all part of our shlichus, no matter what was going on. We talk about it very often, that they were always part of it, part of the fun, part of the sometimes not such fun, but they were always part of it.
What do you mean by not such fun?
I mean, if it was something that, for them, maybe it was, I'm trying to think, when we would have a lot of people, and we had a very small space. I mean, we just added a bigger space here, and we would have people over, and I'd have to improvise some plan of how where were my kids going to be. They were there with us, but sometimes, I had to, say, okay, do you mind sitting there? Like little things, but I paid attention that they should never feel like not part of it.
What was it like to send your kids away from home?
That was difficult for me, not for my husband, but for me. They had to get up 6. They had to be out of the house by 6:30.
Saying to go to Detroit.
Not because school started at 7:30, because we didn't have a ride. And the person that we found, I could write a book about it, but my kids had to leave home very early in the morning. We didn't want our kids to sleep there. I didn't want them to sleep there. I wanted them to be able to come home every day. And that meant they had to be woken up at 6 a.m. And that wasn't so easy for some of them, to get.
I'm sure.
And then they,
I'm sure it wasn't easy for any of them.
Some of them would say they're not feeling well. They were fine, but getting up, 6 o'clock and being out of the house at 6:30, and it was, but we didn't have a choice. There was no online school.
Right.
The school that was opening here, we tried hard to make it a term historic school, but they wanted a conservative school. We still got involved, and actually our daughter has been teaching there. But for our children, they weren't going to lose out on anything that children that grow up, in Crown Heights have. And another thing that we did.
But when it was difficult for your kids, at that point, did you feel, okay, maybe this, I don't know, a mistake, that's too harsh, but maybe this is more than I bargained for?
No, I try to think of how can we make it easier for them. So my husband would say maybe they should sleep over, and they voted against it. None of my kids wanted to sleep over. We would try to compensate for it. I remember that at one point my kids said they don't want to go to families anymore in the morning, and they want to go to their school, but there's no place to sit down. We need a couch. And I will never forget, my husband got them a couch, put it on his station wagon, and took it to Detroit to this school, and the kids had a couch.
You're saying for the hour before school began?
Sometimes it was more than an hour. But today, no one would do that to allow kids in a building themselves.
Right.
That was, But they said they needed a place to just relax. And there's no place there. So we always try to pay attention to their needs. That wasn't going to be secondary. That was, I'm sure my kids, some of them maybe would say that, we spent a lot of time with people, and sometimes they felt like they wish they had us more, because especially, as people become Balchuvas, they really need you quite a bit. And, so they were like, maybe they didn't like it. I will admit that, but now they joke about it. What we did for the kids also, and that we would take them to New York for our Shavuos, because things became quiet here.
Right.
So this way they can be with the Rebbe, and they could be see their grandparents. Sometimes we would stay long enough that they could spend a week in a yeshiva there when they were little. And they all are very appreciative that we did that. In those years, it was not easy with the speed limit of 55. And yes, the cars were not as comfortable as they are today. No minivans. But we did that. And I remember once telling my mother-in-law, I don't think I could do this again. And she said to me, what would your sister-in-law in Australia do if she could get in the car to see the Rebbe? She says, so then I was like, okay, I won't complain. I used to come to New York like, you must be crazy.
It's interesting for you also. It doesn't seem, from your story, it doesn't seem like you had that time in New York where you would be like, I need to be back, like, I'm missing it terribly. It wasn't really a part of your life, really, at any point, right?
Just being by the Rebbe.
How much time did you have in your life that was like that?
Before we left? About 2 years.
Right.
Not much, but
Right.
my, so to speak, building on my hiskashas, when I got married, there was a bunch of older Lubavitch, from the Mrs. Sunkin and Mrs. Mentalik or Rebbetzin, for all of them. They saw me. I don't know what made them pull me in. They all were in the front row, and they saw this younger Bible, and they would tell me in Yiddish, your eyes should just look one way. And and that's how I got to see the Rebbe at Hakafas, because somehow they took an interest in me. I guess I was that outcast look. And that really helped me a lot.
This was after you're married?
After I'm married, yeah. When I go to Fabringens, they always spotted me and pulled me in.
But did you miss that when you're here in Ann Arbor? Or, I mean, it's only a couple years of your life. Did you feel like, whatever, this is just...
What, you have to understand that I also had it before, because I would go to Crown Heights to my sisters, and I spent Shabbos in there.
But so you missed it here when you were here?
I don't know if I miss... I did miss my parents.
Right.
And I don't know what I mostly it was that a treat to be able to see the Rebbe stand. We always, went for mincha. The Rebbe gave us coins. We made sure to let the Rebbe know when we were leaving, so that it was almost like the Rebbe felt like a fatherly figure, that he cared. I think because of all those times that the Rebbe gave me that special attention, it made me feel like the Rebbe really cared about me.
How did you see Shlichus? How did you define it? Was it, some Lubavitchers, some shluchim will say, I go on Shlichus because, and we're here in the state of Michigan, there are many shluchim here who would say that Shlichus, you go on Shlichus to be mekusher to the Rebbe. That's why you go on Shlichus, to be connected to the Rebbe. In your situation where you are you become a Lubavitcher at the same time you become a shliach, more or less on the timeline.
Right.
Is that why you went on Shlichus, to be a makosher? Like, why are you on Shlichus? How are you explaining it? The way you've explained it so far has been like to reach out to other Jews. But explain to me a little bit, how do you explain Shlichus to yourself? What is it that you're doing here? Like at the time.
Today I talk about it with people, is that fulfilling the mission that the Rebbe had at a time that he had a lot of opposition. When the Rebbe launched the concept of Shlichus, there was tremendous opposition. And I feel very honored and privileged that we could be helping the Rebbe with his vision.
But that's why you were doing it at the time?
Not then. Now. Right. Now that I've matured and I understand. Then I did it, just knowing that it was something important. How important it is.
What was important?
The idea of leaving your comfort, and with all the comforts as far as, food, friends, community, to be there for someone else. Now, today I have a different feeling about it. it's okay to have the comforts. It's okay. Today you can have the comforts, Today we have no problem getting anything and everything. When we used to go in, you would think we had, I don't know, 15 kids. We were just two of us and at one point a baby, but we came back like we were never going to see food again. And then we realized, you know what? You can live without fresh cottage cheese. A lot of things started getting off our list. And once that happened, you could start seeing the bigger picture. And I think seeing the bigger picture is like putting the puzzle pieces together. When I think of the people we met and how we met them, it was like crazy stories. And that this was all, now we put it together, it's amazing. There was a woman who got up last Shabbos for Gimel Tammuz. Is most of our Balchuvas moved away. Right. We have very few that live here. And she talked about her hiskashros when that she never met the Rebbe. She says, how is it that I can be connected? And she spoke so beautifully, it was so heartwarming that she gets it. And I think that over the years, first of all, I've learned to appreciate people making changes in their life. I used to joke with my husband and said, we would not make good Balchuvas. Somebody comes along to you and says, change everything about yourself. I don't know if I could do that. And I've gotten to a point where I tremendously appreciate little steps that people do. And they may not be doing 98% of Yiddishkeit, but they have a feeling to do that 1% or 2%. And what the Rebbe taught me is that you may have opposition, but don't let that stop you from following your vision.
Why is it so important to you as you mature? Like you said that you matured in your vision of Shlichus. Why is it so important to make it all about the Rebbe as opposed to earlier?
I think because I can see it clearer. It's not it's like it's like growing up. Okay, there's a certain amount of years you're always focused on yourself. It's almost like a very selfish part of your life. It's all about you. You have to have this. I need this. I need that. You get married. I want this. I want that. And then as life continues, you wake up one day and you say, wow, 1 minute, it's not only about me. And all of a sudden you begin to appreciate your parents. I now appreciate my parents more than ever before, because they had laid a certain foundation. And I tell people who become Balchuvas and their parents are not from, you owe the credit to your parents. They did something for you.
Right.
That, and I think that's the maturity that I'm appreciating, that I can see a big picture here unfolding.
What do you mean by the big picture?
That it's not just leaving Crown Heights and, having less noise, purer air. That's not what it's about. And actually, I just had a group of girls that came for brain care counselors from different places. And I said, you're on Shlichus, whether you live wherever you are. If you can say a good morning to someone and make their day, you did a Shlichus. And I think the word Shlichus needs to be redefined for everyone, because some people they're not going to go to another place. That's okay. It's okay. As long as you are making the world a better place. I was telling the girls, if you just know the letter Aleph, teach it to someone. Like you can be on Shlichus every day find an opportunity that you made the world better. And personally, I don't know, I should say my husband, I don't know if he would think the same as me, but I really feel that people need to know that they can be a shlichus wherever they are. And even if you're from people, you know, if you're a teacher in a cheder or in a yeshiva and there's a kid struggling, if you pay extra attention to that kid and you make this kid's life, you did a shlichus. So that's what I mean to redefine it. And that's what the Rebbe wanted. Wherever you are, you know. I happen to end up here in Ann Arbor. I don't know if I would have had the same feeling if I lived in Crown Heights. And now I can't imagine myself living there. I once came back to New York and I was visiting my mother and I said, oh, the noise is so loud here. And she said, don't forget that you come from New York. You're from Brooklyn. I said, I won't forget it. She like almost got insulted.
All right. Yeah.
You know. Anyhow.
You told me earlier that when you first landed in Detroit and your husband went to look for the car to take that you eventually brought you to Ann Arbor, you sat down and wrote a poem. Do you remember what the poem said?
I just felt very excited. I don't even know what I thought would happen. And also I find there were so many nice surprises and along the way, and I felt like, wow, you know, if we were struggling financially and then all of a sudden somebody, you know, decides to give a donation, I was like, whoa, okay, we're not alone. We're not doing this alone. And that's really, that's a tremendous reminder to me. I'm not doing this alone. I could never do this alone. And I tell people here who become Baal Teshuvas, you can't live a life in a place like this if you're doing it alone. You need a Rebbe. You need that.
So after being on shlichus for 50 years, and there frankly aren't that many people. There are, but in this grand scheme of things, there aren't that many shluchim who have been in one place for 50 years. And what would you say is your proudest accomplishment or proudest achievement of this 50-year journey that's been quite remarkable?
That's a very tough question because I don't want to take the credit to myself or ourselves. I think my appreciation of every Yid, that no matter, you know, I've met some of our own, meaning in Lubavitch, kids who have gone astray a little bit. And I feel like if only people would reach out to them. I say we're very good in outreach to the world, but we should also remember that we should do inreach, because amongst our from community, people need the same kind of warmth and a phone call and all the things we do to make people feel important are so important to everyone. You know, I was telling somebody that I was walking home 2 weeks ago. It was a very hot day, very, very hot. I was almost home. And the guy who owns an ice cream store, it's not kosher, but he said to me, I'd like to offer you some water. And he says, you know, I really like your husband. And I know why he said that, because when my husband walks, he says hello to people. He all the people who have a business know him because he takes the time to say hello to them and ask them how they are. And he insisted. And the funny thing is, I told him, he knows I live up the block. He says, but I really want to give you water. And he gave me a bottle. And I said, but I have a problem because it's our Sabbath. I can't carry the bottle and I'm not going to be able to drink it all. He says, that's not a problem. I just want to give you the water. And to me, I told him, there's still goodness and kindness in the world. And those are the things that really, they speak to me very deeply. There should be no reason for division, no reason. And if anybody knows it well, we Lubavitchers know about that. This meet another Yid, doesn't matter what you see. That to me is what 50 years did to me personally.
So, thank you very much, Rabbi Goldstein.
Okay.
It's a very nice way to end this, and thank you much. Thank you very much for the time.
Okay.
And the story.
Okay, thank you.
The music for this podcast comes from the album Repentance Doors by Oren Tzor Nadav Vachar and is used with their permission.